Dr. Virmani, I'm going to begin by asking you. My first question, 99% of the banned notes back in the system. Does this validate the criticism that demonetization was a failure?
See, there were about 4 or 5 things which in the analysis indicated would happen. But let me start with the 2 things where new data is coming from the RBI report. You know, we are discussing a lot of things where data is not from the RBI report. So I'll just take a minute to start with that. So the first one is that 1% of the notes didn't come back. Now you have to have a benchmark. The benchmark we have is the previous demonetization, where there was an estimated 2% of notes which didn't come back, which means that was the gain in a sense of black money being extinguished. Okay. So compared to that, this I think it comes to between 1.1 and 1.3%. The exact number we'll find out tomorrow probably, but that is a little more than half of what was there. Now some people had said that if the return is more than 2%, one should think it a success. So against that benchmark, clearly it was not a big success. The second point which has repeatedly come up where there's new data, which was on Jali notes, the counterfeit currency, you know, and there I think people are getting it wrong. The number which is being stated is that 0.002% of 500 notes, and I think even less percentage than the 1000 were found to be counterfeit. But that is to be expected. The number I recall of the counterfeit estimates for the whole economy was, if I am not mistaken, something like 0.008%. So compared to that, it's less, but that's to be expected. People are not going to bring in notes which they know are wrong notes and state that they have given this and be for fear of getting caught. So that argument I don't think applies. And I'll just mention the 2 or 3 other things and we can discuss further if you want. And then of course the tax compliance. One thing is clear, more people declared, filed declaration, but they haven't paid. The amount coming in is not so much.
Right.
And then there are a couple of other things. So that,
yes.
I must say I projected that, and I'm disappointed at the amount of declarations. So admittedly, so so far I have not been proved right on that.
Okay, Dr. Virmani, we'll just talk about that. Let me also just get a view from Mr. H.R. Khan. Mr. Khan, I think one of the legitimate questions to be really asked is whether this massive exercise was worth the effort. And when I mean the effort, I'm just talking about the the regular citizens' effort, because it seems like, what was the point of it all? Okay, looks like we've lost Mr. Khan. So, Mr. Virmani, I'll ask you exactly the same question. You didn't quite tell me whether you think it's a failure or not, but, just from a regular citizen's point of view, I'm sure you, faced it, I faced it. Was it worth it at all?
So, the way I put it in immediately aftermath of the demonetization was that for almost 20 years, every budget I have been giving recommendations, and I have never recommended demonetization. So that was a polite way of saying that there is nothing in my economic analysis which suggests that this would be net benefit to the economy and the public. So I stick with that stand. I had said this immediately after the demonetization. So of course, the data which is coming in confirms that more and more, and I'll leave it to the politicians to be harsher about it, but my my implication is very clear.
Dr. Virmani, we have Mr. Khan back. Mr. Khan, we lost you, and the question really that I was asking you is, now that we know for sure 99% of the money making its way back to the system, the legitimate question to ask is whether or not this was worth it at all. How would you react?
No, the idea was from 2 to 3 lakhs will not come back, and probably government can take that by writing up the notes in circulation. That has not happened for sure, and the entire money has come back. And if you hear from every 4th or 5th person in the street is still having 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, if you add up that, I think the entire money would have come. But now subsequently, as government has said, there is a point in that, but what would have remained with the public who would not have known. Now that everything has come to the system and they have a very strong, robust data analytic capability, So they will probably be able to access who has deposited, how much was deposited, and probably from the tax angle, we will be able to get to the many of those people who have not been paying tax, and some of the money which would have never paid tax probably would come under tax net. So one can look that way also from the positive. But the point remains whether it was worth the trouble. I think that is a debatable point.
Well, yes, absolutely. That is debatable. But Mr. Khan, what about those who are pointing the finger at the RBI? Take, for example, the former Finance Minister P. Chidambaram, in a very sort of sarcastic tweet, he says that the government was ill-advised on these expected gains. How would you, react to that?
Since I was not privy to what all has gone between RBI and government. So, but whatever hearsay I gather is probably the dates were advanced, and that's why RBI was not fully prepared. So that created implementation issues. And so, because
maybe
this is
the
a
central
gigantic
bank was...
operation.
Okay.
So you need some lead time, and possibly government has their own reason to advance the time. So probably that created the confusion.
Okay, so you're admitting that there was confusion and perhaps the RBI wasn't prepared. Dr. Virmani, let's talk about what you just heard the finance minister say, and I think this is, something that will resonate with supporters of the note ban. In the defense of demonetization, he said that, hey, look, in the first place, the idea behind note ban was not to confiscate money, but it was to deal a blow to black money, expand the tax base, formalize the economy, and less dependency on cash. And of course, he sort of went on to talk about a lot of other, things that they were hoping to achieve. To what extent would you say that at least some of these have been met?
Right. So, as an economist, I would say the rationale which sounded plausible, the economic rationale, as I've already indicated, was not convincing. But the rationale which sounded plausible to me was the kind of what may call socio-political aspects of it, which is basically a kind of crusade against black money. So to understand that, you have to go and in the last 2-3 years and see that there were a number of laws, etc. There was actions against Swiss banks, there was an SIT, there was a court judgment, etc. So perhaps the political judges or political decision makers got carried away by that, because there seemed to be a whole surge in society against corruption and black money, and perhaps this in a sense persuaded them a lot could be done. So the key point here is that that aspect actually can actually still work if the simplification and other things which I again have pointed out in my analysis of tax reforms and other types of reforms, if they are undertaken, and the finance minister mentioned political reform. So if some of those things are done, one can look forward and say that 5 years from now we may think that this was part of a successful effort. On the other hand, if those other things are not done, it's equally probable that we look back 5 years later and say even those were not successful, because some of the things which need to be done were not done.
Okay. Mr. Khan, the other thing, that the government was sort of trying to set out to achieve is to curtail the problem of counterfeit notes. But if you look at the annual report, it says that the counterfeit currency in the system is somewhere like 7 lakh and I think 60,000 odd notes, that is. Do you think that those worries are also maybe a little exaggerated or no?
No, the figures indicate there is some rising trend, but not very significant.
Right.
But and if you compare to many other countries, our share of counterfeit notes may not be very large. But one has to keep one caveat in mind. In the Indian system, all counterfeit notes don't get into the system because people at the counter will prefer to tear it up rather than tender and get into all the hassle. So there was a move to see that we can capture the information, and the person who is tendering, he should not be subjected to all those police action. But that perhaps has not gone ahead. People have not gone ahead. So I think we should look at how to improve the information collection system so that we can get a handle about how much counterfeit notes are floating around. But as the data indicates, as of now, it's not a very alarming situation.
Okay, so that is settled. Dr. Virmani, let's also look at, I'm trying to look at the silver lining in all of this. Again, note ban supporters would say that some of the fresh deposits, that 1.7 lakh crore, which are under investigation, suspicious transactions, as the finance minister calls them, they will also come under the tax net. So should we presume that somewhere at least that's an additional gain for the government?
Yeah, definitely. That would be part of the analysis which one did, which was as I said, there are two parts to it. One is the declaration. So number of declarations have increased, as the FM said, by 35% or thereabouts. Because these are probably people who have small amounts of income, the amount of income tax declared apparently is not that much. One has not seen the details of this data, but I'll take what has been said. So that is two parts of it. And the third part was that when people declared, they were going on a hope and prayer that this would be accepted. So clearly those 1 point whatever lakhs he has said will be investigated and they will be found. Now question is how optimistic we should be. We could say that perhaps 10 to 30% of that probably they will be able to discover that wrongdoing or non-declaration, but certainly not the full 100%. And that I would definitely say would be a gain once that exercise is completed. But right now we are just speculating. When I said 10 to 30 is purely speculative. So it's conditional. If they get 30% of those to actually are able to prove that they were on unaccounted income, then I would consider that a successful operation. Okay. If it is less than, if it's very little, if there's less than 5 or 10%, then obviously it would not be a big success.
Okay. Mr. Khan, these DeMo numbers are also coming almost 10 months after the note ban, and we all know that the RBI kept us all guessing, saying that they were still counting the notes. Even today, the annual report says that these are only tentative numbers. Was this delay even justified in, making this public knowledge?
No, because whatever the counting capacity, it is much more than the notes have come, much more than the counting capacity of the bank. And they have now hired some new machines and people are working in additional shifts. So they are trying to, they don't want to take any chance about this, and these counterfeits also have to be checked. So that's why it is taking time. But tentative figure, as they have already published, that used to be broadly around that figure. So 1 or 2% plus and minus here and there. Otherwise, the tentative figure one should take it on its face value.
Dr. Virmani, I have time for one last question, and I want to ask you. The other argument in support of this has been that it's acted as a shock treatment, if you like, in helping change from this, this Indian typical Lala culture. Do you think that along with big reforms like, say, the GST, the bankruptcy code, and of course the note ban, things are sort of working in that direction?
No, well, the GST is a whole different thing which we have discussed before, and it's a good thing even if there are negative factors, and we have to look at this single rate and all that. But just on demonetization, I think the weakness, my guess is that not many economic analysts or good economists really analyze and advised on the implications of demonetization. It's one thing for political system to take a decision, but they must do it on the basis of full information. And I have to say that I do not see much evidence that a good economic analysis of the likely impact of demonetization was done. And I think that is one lesson which I hope the government learns from this, that very complicated things like demonetization, you must have all inputs. It's okay even if they had known that there will be negative effects on GDP, etc., and gone ahead, that is their prerogative, and that they have to face the political. But I think it's a bad idea not to have a good analysis from people who are supposed to know, the economists, of the implications and what are the likely negative effects. Just on a personal note, this is something which I always did. When somebody asked me, I always used to give the possible negative effects. Even if I was very keen on a particular policy, I would always say that these are possible risks to this new policy, and it's for you, the political person, to decide whether you want to take the risk. And I think that is very important in good policy making.
All right. On that note, Dr. Virmani and Mr. Khan, thank you so much for taking time out for us for this discussion here on India Tonight. We really appreciate it.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow, and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/ETNow.